everybody, this is David with No Chaser, and let's get into it. What I'm going to talk about today, I'll begin with this scenario. So let's say you are getting sober for the first time or second time, third time, whatever it may be, and you're on the right path, you're getting clean, and you happen to be in a relationship, and you were in a relationship during a large time of your addiction or alcoholism or what have you, but you're getting sober and you're actually making it through. Days turn into weeks and then months and then maybe even over a year, and you're just, things are going great. So the relationship you're in could have been on the brink before you got clean or sober. Maybe there was an ultimatum thrown around. So I mean, now that everything's going well, one would assume that 99.99% of these relationships will work out just fine. Clearly, the way I've set this up and with my inflection, that is not the case, or at least not as much as one would think. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait, some relationships don't work out because, check notes, because of sobriety? And listen, there's a couple obvious reasons why this might be the case, and I'll just kind of dispel those as not what I'm talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are addicted or alcoholic, and they're with someone who's also addicted and alcoholic. And if one person gets sober or clean, and the other person doesn't, I mean, it's pretty obvious. We can file that under no duh of like why that wouldn't work out. There could be other cases too where, someone like set down an ultimatum, you got to get clean and sober, and the person is doing it, but there was just too much that occurred. Too much damage was done. The relationship was too fractured because of what happened during the addiction that the person just can't get over it. They can't regain trust. And, especially if there's other, the issues wasn't just, the use or the drinking, but the behavioral problems that maybe came with it. Like if someone was not only alcoholic and, addicted, but it caused them to be abusive or cheat on them, and it's just like, I thought this could work out, but too much damage has been done. Sorry, later, skater. But what I'm talking about is kind of what becomes surprising to a lot of people, that there is a person in a relationship who gets clean and sober for a substantial amount of time. Everything is going on the up and up. I mean, it's difficult as it is, but things are looking good. The other person is what you'd say a normie or whatever you want to call it. I mean, just a not addicted person. And there's issues. There's friction. And I know you're probably thinking like, dude, drug addiction and alcoholism, it's already a bleak enough subject. Why do you have to make things more bleak? Well, just because something's bleak doesn't mean it shouldn't be discussed, because this hits a lot of people unexpectedly. And you know what, to be honest, this hit yours truly unexpectedly in a scenario just like this, where it's just like, all right, I was the dead weight. I was the anchor in the relationship. Once I turned things around, and I try not to think this self-absorbed, but really, I'm trying to assume my responsibility. Once I turn things around, I mean, it'll be gangbusters. A lot of people are like, the only problem in our relationship was that I couldn't get my stuff together. I couldn't get better, but you take that away and then we're golden. We're good. But there's something that you have to look deeper into the psychology of it. Like there was times I was in long-term relationships and I thought to myself, this is when I was like deep in my drinking, where I was like, how is this person with me? Like, how maybe they don't know, but like I become so irresponsible or undependable or just erratic in my behavior because of my drinking or drug use. Like, how do they stay with me? Or, another thought that has crossed my mind before when I'd gotten sober is that like, ooh, maybe like mostly this person knew me when I was in active alcoholism or drug use. Who did they fall in love with? Do they even really know me? I don't feel like I know me. What's going on here? And what can occur and what really shocks some people is that I won't say that people in relationships like this, the sober or the not addicted person likes their significant other to be addicted, but there is a dynamic in the relationship when there is one person who is the not addicted person, and there's one person that is in active addiction or alcoholism that's suffering. Sometimes roles are made out of these. There's kind of the caretaker person and the person that's dependent on them. A lot of codependency comes into stuff like this, and not just codependency from the addict or alcoholic. And like I said, when I say dynamic too, sometimes this friction occurs when a person gets sober because they start to get a little bit more self-worth. They start to they kind of take charge. A lot of things you'll hear in recovery is a sort of positive selfishness. Like they're going to be selfish in the right ways. And they have things where maybe they won't put up with it anymore. And when I say put up with it, maybe the partner with them, even though they were clean and sober, was manipulative and you may not have realized it. Or, and I really, really don't want to spin this in towards like blaming the other person. I'm just saying, when in terms of dynamic is created, I mean, just think about it this way. If you were with somebody for like even multiple years when you were in active alcoholism or addiction, something was going on. I mean, this was a thought that occurred to me a lot where I was just like, ugh, I don't want to be judgmental of anybody else, but why is this person with me still? Like, wouldn't this, like, when you just hit the ejector seat, like now, like, what's going on? And what happens, what I've seen occur many times, is that this dynamic that has been solidified in what this relationship was, the person, starts to make real changes in their life once they're clean and sober and truly in recovery. And the other person is like, wait, what? Like I mean, I didn't like you suffering, but I kind of liked it when you were this way. Because especially due to like low self-worth and self-esteem issues and guilt, especially, that the person who is addicted in the relationship is more malleable, more kind of like moldable to what the other person wants them to be. And I'm not saying this is like other people do this with malice. A lot of times they're probably just completely unconscious that this is happening. But the person that doesn't have the issue in the relationship can kind of get away with more or act in accordance to how they want, or just have a feeling of control. A lot of times when people kind of change their self-worth around, and they change their sort of outlook on the world, and they just make real like fundamental changes, this new person is almost threatening to the other person, because they're acting different, and maybe they're like standing up for themselves, or not even just standing up for themselves. Maybe they want like different things, and that other person's not along for this new ride. And a lot of times, again, I want to like excise any sort of judgmental nature of like this other in the relationship. But sometimes it just occurs that something that was keeping the not addicted person in the relationship is maybe some other issue that they had, maybe some sort of mental health issue, maybe some sort of problem of their own that was debilitating, maybe in not such a like obvious way, or in such a way that was so drastic as like addiction or drinking, but it was in their own way. And then one person makes these changes. And by the way, what I'm talking about, I'm not just talking about a person who like is trying to get sober and just decides to get sober and this happens in a relationship. I'm talking about what occurs when somebody is really doing the deal and they are making these fundamental changes, the ones that you think would save the relationship. And so this person is making these changes and they're bettering themselves, and they start to have expectations for the other person. Maybe some of the other person's flaws become more pronounced. This sort of like power imbalance starts to occur. And, to be honest, maybe the person that is in recovery starts to get a little like full of themselves, or holier than thou, or just, raises their expectations on people. And all of a sudden, they expect the other person to make these like core changes that they're making. And the other person's like, hey, screw you, man. Just because you decided to like get yourself together, like because you were getting DUIs or fired from work or health problems, or just, the myriad reasons of like why people like have to get sober. Just because like this occurred to you now, you're not going to tell me I need to change my life. Maybe the person's not even conscious of anything they need to change, because again, a dynamic is created because there is such an imbalance in a relationship where one person is really in the thick of it as far as addiction and drinking, and one person is not. And this is, by the way, this is in no way saying that this is the mold of a relationship. If you've ever been in one and that was the case, I'm not saying your relationship is a power imbalance. That's not what I'm saying at all. Many people, like, the person just struggles, but they obviously have an inherent self-worth and they have great parts about them, just like, every kind of human being in this world, whether they're flawed or not. And they love them and they're sticking with them, especially because they realize, as far as like alcoholism and addiction is concerned, that it's not a sort of strict moral failing on that person's part too. They at least can recognize that this person doesn't mean to do the destructive or selfish things they do. And I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm saying it is a lot more common, and a lot more people have been shocked when they're just like, "Whoa, he finally got it together, or she finally got it together, and now they're getting divorced." That doesn't make any sense. Like I say, I've lived this very scenario in a long-term relationship, and it was just like baffling to a lot of people. We're just like, wait. The problem that we thought was solved. How is it now like fully, like the relationship was in the thick of it and pretty crappy for a while, but now this is what the death nail is. The thing that you've been looking for this whole time is actually what is like the nail in the coffin. And like I said, it when a person is finally clean, sober, and they're really doing the whole like recovery deal, the fundamentals of it. They're really being introspective, and they're reflecting on how they live their life and the changes they need to make. I think, I mean, this happened for me, but I would assume that thoughts of this nature would come across, of thoughts of wondering like, what is what is my relationship with this person if I have been in this state of total disarray for so long? Like, what does that say about how we are? And again, those thoughts that come to the person of just like, does this person even know who I am? Do they love me for me? I know it's getting a little melodramatic here, but like, but honestly, because a lot of people have the feeling of that they've been, addicted or drinking for a long time, and then they're finally like have some substantial amount of time sober. They're like, I don't even think I know who I am. So if I don't really know who I am, maybe this person doesn't know me at all. Who does this person love? What do they expect from me if I don't feel like I've been me? And like I said, a lot of times there can be friction caused from this because of the offset of the dynamic that has been established, or the changes of personality, or I mean, that's the funny thing, is that a lot of people don't realize, like, you're in a relationship with a person and they're like, you need to make fundamental changes, you need to completely change your life, and they change your life, and they're like, oh wait, things have changed now. And this is not to say that, like, a person is like, you know, like, this is not saying that a person wants to be in a relationship with someone that's suffering so they can manipulate them. This is not saying that the people that are with addicted people are mean and like controlling or anything like that. And again, I'm talking about just a certain subgroup in the recovery world of relationships where this occurs. And it's not to make, there's no judgment on here going of anybody who screwed this up or messes it up, or there's people out there that don't want you to get sober, or there's people that are holding you back and all this type of stuff. I'm just saying it is something that occurs to people because of the tectonic shifts that need to occur for someone to be fully in recovery and to be sober. And if a person changes so much, sometimes the relationships won't work with the changes for whatever reasons, good or bad. And these aren't necessarily all like sad endings. This is something that sometimes a lot of people aren't glad that occurred, and they go off and they find people that they're more compatible with, and such is life. I don't know. Just listen. You guys are fine. If you're in a relationship and you're getting sober, don't worry about anything. Disregard all that I have said, or don't, whatever. I do appreciate you guys watching and listening to my craziness. I hope if you're struggling out there, keep at it. I hope you can find support or strength from people around you. Seek that if you're not finding it. If you're struggling and don't want to get better, I hope you have as less of suffering as possible. If you're in recovery and doing well, awesome, keep it up. And that is all. Be well.